Today I'm giving a presentation on the introduction and the outlook of hyper-casual gaming. To start, we will review the history of hyper-casual. The term hyper-casual was coined by Johann Heinz in 2017 in a series of articles called The Ascendance of Hyper-Casual on pocketgamer.biz. There are three major points that Johann he stated. The first one is, in hyper-casual games, they allow the players to have instant access to the content. In the past, in game industry, when we design games, we would have storyline, we would have trailers, we would have account setup, character setup, tutorials perhaps. But in hyper-casual, all of that is removed, or at least reduced, to basically allow players to experience the gameplay immediately. And because of that, the game mechanics, they have to be simple and understandable. So the first point is instant access to content. The second point is minimalism in gameplay and design, and sometimes even in art. Because hyper-casual gaming, the games, they have to be released to the market in a very short amount of time to test the game's viability in the market. So the development costs, they have to be low, and development cycle has to be short. Therefore, we cannot spend too much time in creating very high definition in 3D models or texture maps, or in sceneries, and therefore actually a lot of games are in 2D. This is to reduce the production cycles and also to not overspend the production budget on the graphics fidelity in the game. But instead, it's focusing on gameplay and design. So the second point is minimalism in gameplay and design. The third point is simple monetization. There are no upsells in hyper-casual games, and the players would spend time watching ads instead. So in a lot of casual games or other types of games, even hardcore games, there are a lot of upsell activities, there are a lot of events, there are a lot of in-app purchase features. But not so much in hyper-casual. In hyper-casual, they simply ask the players to watch ads. Okay, we're done with the history of hyper-casual. Now let's get on to introduction of the hyper-casual. There are a few criteria in hyper-casual games. The first one is lightweight. We do not want the players to spend a lot of time waiting after they click the download. So we want the download to be fairly painless and quick. So having the download package size to be small is important. The second point is no learning curve or very little learning curve. We want to have gameplay that the players can relate to in real-life experiences like mowing lawns or pouring water, and flexing rubber bands. A lot of these experiences that the players have experienced in real life, they can relate in the games, so that they do not require too much tutorial and explaining. Okay, the third point is single goal. A lot of games, they have multiple goals in the game. You can go for the social recognition in the gaming community. You can go for a lot of wealth in the game, or so on and so forth. But in hyper-casual games, we want the goals to be fairly simple. Usually just one goal, like passing this level, overcoming this boss. The fourth point is short sessions. We don't want, in casual games, hyper-casual games, a lot of times the players they're waiting in line, maybe in Starbucks for a cup of coffee, and they can start and finish a session in 2 to 3 minutes, sometimes even less, sometimes even 30 seconds. So we want the sessions to be fairly short. And what comes with that is we would like to see a lot of number of sessions that the players will come back to the game per day. So it's quite different as opposed to hardcore games. In hardcore games, you will have longer sessions and perhaps less number of sessions per day. And the fifth point is simple mechanics. We do not want the control to be too complicated. Hyper-casual games are, for the most part, not very skill-based. That's not to say there are no skills involved, but they're not esports. They're not micromanagement types. So we do not want the control, the gameplay, to be too complicated. So we need the mechanisms to be simple. And the sixth point, the last point, is the short production cycles. As we have stated before, we need to experiment a lot of different ideas. And usually within 3 weeks, we need to get an idea to finish game and start testing in the market. The game doesn't have to be very polished, but we need to be able to soft launch the game and see the players appreciate the innovation that we have come up with. So part of the thing about shorter production cycle, one is time. We need to have shorter time to market, as I mentioned, no more than 3 weeks. The second one is that will basically give you lower production cost. The hyper-casual games in general are operating on lower margin, so you cannot afford to spend too much money on an idea that's not proven yet. So we need to test a lot, and once you find a gameplay mechanism that the players actually do like, then you need to scale it up. And that's how you create profit with hyper-casual games. Okay, now let's talk about some KPIs with hyper-casual games. The first one is ad monetizations, because this is the only way, or for the most part the only way, for hyper-casual games to monetize. So how much money that you're making from ads, eventually you'll calculate to LTV. And LTV is how you measure hyper-casual games. The second one is satisfy effects. And there are a lot of different ways to test for this, but basically the experience that players can relate. We need the players to have pleasure, or they perceive that they're enjoying playing the game. And we need to have ways to measure for that. So satisfy effects is important with hyper-casual games. And obviously IPM, install per milli, and CTR, click-through rate, are all very important. And this brings us to the next subject, which is the video creatives. Because we're operating on very small, low margins, we need to have mass appeal with our video creatives. When we have more people to click on your ads and more people install after watching the ad, then you can have more players play through your game and watch ads. So the video creatives is really important for hyper-casual games. Regular testing of gameplay in video creatives is very important. We need to try a lot of different content, different creatives, and a lot of times we need to test out different game design or gameplay mechanisms in the creatives. If a creative shows high CTR, then perhaps this mechanic can be implemented in the game. So imagine the amount of time that you take to make a hyper-casual game, let's just say 3 weeks, versus the amount of time to make a video creative. Obviously, the amount of time to make a video creative is a lot shorter than making the actual game. So you can actually test out your idea in the video creative first to see if that's attracting players to click through. And in all types of games, we're always balancing between different things. In skill-based games, we're basically balancing player skills versus the AI, versus the NPC. And in hyper-casual games, we're actually balancing between ad placements and level difficulty. Because when the players are having difficulty passing a level, they can potentially watch a video ad and revive and retry, or getting a buff, or somehow cheat through that level. So how we balance the level difficulties and how much ads exposures that we're getting, that's usually the balance. So it's quite different from other types of games. In a typical MMORPG, you will balance through how much time players are investing in the game versus a little bit of skills, a little bit of strategy, and how much money they're spending. So in the end, it's balancing, do you want to spend money or do you want to spend a lot of time grinding? So hyper-casual is very, very different from that type of games. The next one is target demographic. So this is quite simple. Hyper-casual is actually designed for all ages, from age of 10 to age of 55, and there's no gender differences. Obviously, one hyper-casual game could have more tendency towards female audience or male audience, but in general, hyper-casual, the whole category, is quite broad. It doesn't target any gender. And another way to look at hyper-casual is that it is not a genre. A lot of people think about hardcore games, mid-core games, casual games, and hyper-casual games. That's actually not the right way to look at it, because hyper-casual games is more of a business model than a game genre. And as I have mentioned earlier, you're actually paying attention to ad monetization and game difficulty, driving the players to watch more ads. So it's quite different. There are a lot of similarities actually between hyper-casual games and typical mobile games, but there's some key differences because they do monetize differently. Now let's compare casual games and hyper-casual games, because a lot of people are sort of mixing them up. So first of all, for casual games, they're basically games as a service. And there are a lot of content and in-app purchase. So you either you just pay to download, you just pay and you buy the game and you enjoy playing the game, or you download the game for free, and then as you need more virtual items, then you pay for it. So that would be casual games. But hyper-casual games are focusing on top downloads. So when you go to Apple's ranking chart or Google Play ranking charts, you look at the top downloads, you look at the top 10, they're primarily hyper-casual games. And again, there's simple game mechanisms and app monetizations. And okay, so now let's talk about the outlook, what lies ahead of us in hyper-casual. This is a new business model, and a lot of ad networks are getting into this business, and we believe that the outlook for hyper-casual is still going to be great. There will be more competition. A lot of ad networks like AppLovin and IronSource are starting their own studios. This is a great way to get your own traffic. I also believe that more hyper-casual games will be paying attention to creating longer retentions. So while they have good gameplay mechanisms and very high satisfaction effects, but they also want to have a longer retention because you can make a lot more money that way. A lot of the hyper-casual games, they tend to lose their players within 3 days to 1 week. So this is another area that a lot of the studios are focusing on, trying to create longer retention. And with video creatives, they're actually basically a movement towards playable ads. So there are a lot of the ads that are actually somewhat playable. This is also a trend. We're seeing, we have been seeing that for the past 1 year, but we're starting to see that that's almost a must in a lot of top games. And these playable ads is also another way to experiment on new gameplay mechanisms. Okay, this is the conclusion of my presentation. Thank you for watching.